Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Excuse My Friend and Me, the podcast where we talk about some of the biggest topics in sports and where two fans of rival teams try to put their sports allegiance aside. But we'll probably fail to do so as every time. I know this is a little mix up because usually we have Sean bringing us in, but tonight we'll have Casey doing it. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's all applaud for Brady in the house. How are you doing? How's your night?
I'm good. I just wanted to share the love. I get a feeling people are tired of hearing me, especially now nobody listens when I was by myself. So I figured I'd share the love and let you take the lead. So you're doing good so far, but I'll grade you on a curve at the end of the podcast.
Oh, wow. A learning curve. Thanks. It takes a lot for me to do this, but it's okay, guys. You're going to hear me for a little bit. Before we get into it, I just want to say, yes, we all know that Brady, my co-star here, he is a Cardinals fan, and I am a Seahawks fan. And just to get one thing out of the subject, one thing out of everybody's head, no, I do not want to talk about yesterday's game. Anyways, let's continue on to topic number 1, NFL Week 7 recap. Brady?
Oh, so you're seriously not talking about the Seahawks?
My bad. Yeah. I go into it.
We're seriously not going to talk about the Seahawks?
Let me mentally prepare myself. We will talk about it, but just not yet, please. Let me have a little let me have some peace in me too.
So you're one of those peel the Band-Aid off slowly people. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
I mean, I'm if we're going to tell our fans everything, I just came out of knee surgery and I don't want to peel the Band-Aid that's still lingering there that I should have peeled off like maybe 3 days ago. So yes, this Band-Aid's going to ache so bad when I peel it off about the Seahawks. So ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about how fudging horrible the Seahawks have been playing. So if anybody has watched the latest game yesterday, the Seahawks versus the Saints, which, in reminder, that's my fiance's second favorite team. And that night we had a full house of Saints in here, except for, of course, my other roommate, Javi, who is a Raiders fan, but he was rooting on for the Seahawks. But what the hell, Gino? I mean, the whole time I was watching Collins make runs after runs every time that Gino would just hand him the ball. What the hell, Seahawks? No defense, no receivers trying to maintain open. But first things first, I want to talk about how the camera crew, the whole entire game, there was another focus group besides the performance of the team. Metcalf and Lattimore, the two that had non-stop disagreement and dispute on that game. Oh my God. I mean, I just sent over a picture to you. I mean, I don't know if you received it yet, but it's pretty much Lattimore grabbing Metcalf down on his helmet and just bringing his head down. And then you'll see sometimes even after the play is done, you'll see Metcalf going up to Lattimore and just kind of like shoving him on the side, pushing him on the side. That was just nonstop. I thought it was hysterical. I mean, the only thing that got me off the whole dispute going on between these two was the performance of Gino. I mean, not one single time did Gino try to throw or try to maneuver himself away from the defense trying to get to him. He was getting either tackled down, getting caught by the ankles and being brought down, or just handing it over to Collins for him to make a run for it. And poor Collins taking hit after hit, trying to bring the Seahawks closer and closer to that touchdown line. But it didn't really actually work. Not to mention 2 failed kicks by the field kicker that never made it through. I know, Sean, you weren't there entirely. You said you saw the last few seconds of the game that pretty much summed up the whole entire game for you. But any thoughts to it?
Yeah, so I had to work late last night. So like you said, I only caught like the last 5-ish minutes of the game. In fact, I turned it on maybe a couple plays before they end up kicking the game-winning field goal. But from what I gathered from the commentators is the last drive for the Seahawks where they basically went backwards 15 yards pretty much summed up the entire game. I did continually hear that they wouldn't throw the ball down the field, whether it be weather or whatever. And they kept saying with the exception of one play to Metcalf. And I'm looking at the picture that you just sent me, and yeah, that's fight worthy. He's got his hand all up in his face, and it is not in a respectful manner. So I'm surprised that they didn't like rip off helmets and go after each other.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, sometimes the camera will zoom back into Wilson, and Wilson's just kind of there, like, really, this is this is happening. What can I say? It's Seahawks are my team, but I just think this season is not it.
Well, I will say this: like, yes, they don't have Russell Wilson. However, the the Saints had a bye week the week before. They had like 15 days to prepare. So if you get into a competition with them and you only lose by 3, that's not that bad. It's just it shouldn't have been by 3. It should have been by more, from what I understand. Like, I think both teams left plays on the field.
Yeah.
Well, I want to cheer us up a little bit because
right.
I want to talk positively. So what I wanted to talk about was the Bengals beating the Ravens, or more specifically, like how bad they beat the Ravens by. It was like 41-17. Granted, I'm watching NFL Red Zone, so it seemed like every 5 minutes there was another Bengals touchdown that just keep pulling away. So I got to thinking, like, hey, the Bengals are good. They're 5-2. Their quarterback's 6th in the league in yards. And by the way, he threw for over 400 yards against the Ravens. He's top 10 completion percentage. He's tied for 4th of most touchdowns. And he's 5th in quarterback rating at 108.9. Guess who's 6th and 7th? A couple of guys named Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. So technically, Burrow is performing better than 2 Hall of Famers. Mixon is like 3rd in the league in yards. Their tight end leads the league in touchdowns for tight ends. And Jamar Chase seems to be, so far, the next coming of Jerry Rice, because he's got more receiving yards than any other player in their first 7 games in history. If you combine him and their tight end, Uzoma, they got 11 touchdowns between them. Their defense is off the hook. They're only one of 5 teams that's averaging giving up less than 20 points a game. They're 5th in the league in sacks. If not for an overtime loss to the Green Bay Packers, where both teams missed field goals in that overtime, they would be on a 5-game winning streak.
Damn.
That's crazy. Like, who had the Bengals at a 5-game winning streak before now? So,
right.
And it's only going to get better, because guess who they got coming up? Next week, they got the Jets. Then they got the Browns, who's kind of the kings of inconsistency right now. They get their bye week. Then they go play the Raiders, which will be a tough game. And then they're home against Pittsburgh. If they go 3-1 during that stretch, that means they're going to be going into December at 8-3. That's crazy. Burrow is not supposed to be this good this quick.
And I mean, that is a way to enlighten the mood. And I never thought the Bengals would be up there. I mean, I thought, in all honesty, when you said Bengals versus the Ravens, I honestly thought the Ravens would take it, not the Bengals. And to be realistically, I'm pretty shocked to read that, Green Bay won by an OT loss. That's pretty insane, because that meant Bengals could have had that game too. I mean, I think it was a close match throughout the whole entire time too, right? It wasn't just one team leading the whole entire time.
I forget who was up front, but I do think one team kind of came back at the end to tie it. But both teams had game-winning field goal kicks in overtime, and both missed. Yeah. So I think there was a stretch, if I recall, there was like between the fourth quarter and overtime, there was like 5 consecutive kicks missed, which included like extra points. So it was like a total bizarre game. But when you realize that they're one bizarre play away from having a 5-game winning streak, that's crazy.
Right. Which I want to lead us to the next, to the next week's game. I want to talk about something that has been kind of in news headlines and kind of in people's rumors, this and that. We talked about them a bit last week, more of the coach, but let's talk about the actual team itself. What about the Raiders? It's pretty cool that I honestly didn't think the Raiders were going to be the number 1 in AFC West, but 5-2, and they have a bye week this week before they have to versus the Giants, which I think the Raiders are actually going to take on the Giants and no problem.
Oh yeah, because the last time I checked, the Giants suck.
I mean, that's one way to put it, but yeah. Looking at Giants scoreboard, I mean, I have no issue saying the Raiders are going to take that week, and I mean, especially having a bypass week, they're going to prepare it. They're going to prepare for it. They're going to be ready for what's coming, and they're just going to smoke them. So
I will openly fall on my sword and say I did not think the Raiders were going to be very good this year, but I will admit part of that logic was because of the other teams in the division. Like, I expected the Chargers to be a good, if not elite team, and who the hell saw the Chiefs playing this bad?
yeah,
So those two things combined, and like I said, they're playing well combined with those other two teams not being as good as I thought they were. I am actually surprised, like you, that they are leading that division. The only pause I would give, so like last week when they won that game, they were playing Denver, who's having their own problems, and this week they played the Eagles. They are leading the division. I will give them kudos, but I'm a little hesitant to anoint somebody as being a good team when you're playing somebody like the Broncos and the Eagles. That's like when the Niners were 2-0.
Yeah.
Well, who'd they play? They played the Lions and the Eagles, and they haven't won a game since. So they've got legitimate wins too. Don't get me wrong, because they beat the Ravens too. In fact, I think before this past Sunday, that was the only loss the Ravens had. They're not playing bad. I don't want to discredit what they're doing as much as it sounds like I am. I'm just still hesitant to anoint them the champions of that division yet. But again, I think that's more for who's in the division.
Definitely agree with you on that one. I gotta admit, Raiders are up there, and especially after the whole scandal that's going on, you would think like a lot of controversy would be within the team, but no, they're pushing through. And I'm honest to say that I have faith that within the next two games, which is with the Giants and then followed by the Chiefs, they're gonna take it on. I mean, the next one, which I think me and you are gonna be especially on, because the Bengals and the Raiders are gonna be playing on November 21st. I think that's going to be one of their most interesting games that they're up against. Which leads me to one more topic I do want to talk about. And I just want to get your insider because you're the fan. But I got to say, you guys are undefeated for NFC West.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Can you say that again?
You know what? Let's just skip what I was going to say. It doesn't matter. We'll talk about it some other day. But I got to give it to you, Cardinals. I mean, damn. Real quick, just a quick recap of what you think, because I know that I'm in shock, but of course I am in shock about a lot of performances this season.
Well, if you're asking me, am I surprised they're undefeated? Honest, logical answer is yes. Surprised that I think that they're good? The answer is no. Because remember at the beginning of the season, I was saying I think 3 NFC West teams are making the playoffs, and I would put 4 in there if I didn't think it was almost a mathematical impossibility. So I thought that they were with every team in that division. Now, last week they played the Texans, so if I'm going to kind of downgrade the Raiders win for playing the Eagles, I kind of have to downgrade the Cardinals win for playing the Texans, because the Texans are just garbage until further notice. But I'm gotta admit, I'm kind of disappointed with the game this week, and I say that kind of nervously because we're supposed to play Thursday against the Packers. That's supposed to be the measuring stick, because everybody keeps saying, well, yeah, they haven't really played anybody but the Rams. I'm sorry, we beat the Rams, but I digress. So this was supposed to be the measuring stick, and COVID is just running through the Packers right now. Like, I think they have numerous players that are probably not playing Thursday now. So it's kind of that catch-22 of, if they win, we're going to get the yeah buts. They beat the Packers, but the team wasn't fully strength. But if we lose, it's going to be like, see, told you, they ain't as good as we thought they were. So I kind of mentally messed up right now because I want them to win, but at the same time, I know they're still not going to get the credit they probably deserve, and it just breaks my heart.
Oh, I just had to hear it from you. Okay. I mean, I know there's so much emotion going through you about that, but I mean, what are your future topic for next week, week 8?
We're speaking of breaking hearts. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry is not just breaking hearts; he's breaking souls. He is just like a man on a mission, even more than what I remember him doing last year. And I just want to highlight what he's doing, because the Titans, I didn't think were a good team coming into this year. I had them mediocre at best. And not only right now are they leading the division, they're the only team in their division with a winning record. And it is 100% Derrick Henry. Like, remember a couple weeks ago when I said Lamar Jackson was the main and only reason that the Ravens are winning? The same could be said for Derrick Henry, except I would say Derrick Henry doesn't throw the ball, but he threw for a touchdown last week too. So now even he's starting to throw the ball, which, quick note, did you know that he now has more passing touchdowns than receiving touchdowns? and he's got one.
Right.
So he's not like he's Marshall Faulk coming out of the backfield getting a lot of receptions either. I think he's got like less than 10 receptions on the season. Everybody knows what he's going to do, and he's still just plowing through them like a bulldozer. He's got 869 yards rushing this year, and the next closest player is damn near 300 yards back. Right. He's got 191 rushing attempts. The next closest player is 86 attempts back. And here's the kicker for both of those stats. His rushing attempts and yards is more than 25 teams in those categories. So he's literally got more individual rushing yards than 25 NFL teams, and he's got more attempts than 25 NFL teams. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
He's got like 10 touchdowns. The next closest person has 6, and that's rushing touchdowns, by the way. He's got more individual touchdowns than the Jets' entire team for the season. So he is literally outperforming teams.
Right.
Just give him the MVP now. As long as the Titans make the playoffs, which by all intents and purposes they're going to because they're going to win their division, just give him the MVP now. It's ridiculous.
I agree with you. But that leads us to what the audience wants to know. The Week 8 predictions. Sean, Green Bay versus Arizona Cardinals. For that night, who are you going for?
You know where I'm going. I don't even know why I asked the question. Give me Cardinals all day. Even before COVID, give me Cardinals all day.
You know, just because we talked about this a little bit beforehand, I'm actually going to give this one to the Cardinals as well. I honestly think the Cardinals have a chance to bring it home, and especially that I believe that game is a home game for them.
Yes, it's in Arizona.
So I'm definitely they're going to be wild up for this, and I think they're more than prepared for it, especially given that they're kind of holding it down throughout the whole time, and it's going to be one of their big highlights that a lot of people are going to be tuning in for. So I have faith in Cardinals on this one. Next one is going to be Cleveland versus Pittsburgh. I got to hear you on that.
There's probably a lot of trends forming in the first few episodes of podcasts that people are probably picking up on. One of them is probably how much I disdain the Steelers. So give me the Browns. I don't care if they're inconsistent. Give me the Browns.
And give me the Steelers. This next one. The Jaguars versus the Seahawks. So even though I said this game this Monday, that they were going to bring it home because they need this win. They needed a lot of wins. I'm going to give it to Seahawks. I think Seahawks this is one of the games that they must bring it home to. And I think versus the Jaguars is a great opportunity to get their practice going again and get their win going and finally have Geno pass the ball. So I'm going to say Seahawks.
I'm picking the Seahawks too because
yes.
Jacksonville is coming clear across the country, and by the way, they're not a good team either. But the main reason I'm picking them is because if not now, when? Like, if you're not going to win this game, Seattle, then when are you ever going to win another game?
Yeah, well said. Especially because if 2-5 versus 1-5, which this is one of the games that Seahawks come on. If you lose, this is just your season's done. That's it. We're done. This leads us to the next game. The Buccaneers versus the New Orleans Saints. I kind of sorry about that little muffle right there. I just watched my fiance just cheer on the Saints as I said it. But I'm going to give this one to the Buccaneers. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm taking the Bucs too. I was not impressed by New Orleans. There's a big difference between playing against Geno Smith versus Tom Brady. Yeah, so I just don't see it happening. So, yeah, give me the Bucs.
Next up, we have the Cowboys versus Minnesota. I'll give this one to the Cowboys. I mean, Cowboys have been keeping up with their streaks of 5-1, not doing too bad in season. Minnesota is 3-3, so Cowboys will be taking this one home.
I flip flopped on this one too because Minnesota, even though they're 3-3, they're a good team. In Dallas, I want to say has kind of gotten rich off their division a little bit, but I was just going to go with whoever you didn't go with because had no problem picking either team. So if you got the Cowboys, I got the Vikings.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Well, that concludes our NFL topic.
Can we talk about something else?
Moving on to World Series. I mean, another salt to the wound, as you say. But let's talk about the Braves and Houston, because my beloved Dodgers did not bring it home this year. You know what, Sean? Just take it away. You got this.
Man, you are an emotional wreck. You couldn't even get a sentence together.
No, I couldn't. I mean...
All right, we got Atlanta versus Houston in the World Series. This is the first time Atlanta's been in the World Series this millennium. Last time they were there was 1999. Houston just won it in 2017, but they've had a little bit of dirty laundry since then, shall we say. So that's pretty much the setup between the two teams. So, Katie, who you got?
I'm going to give it to the Braves. I think Eddie Rosario has been doing a lot goodness to, I mean, that's just one of many players that the Braves has going on right now, but he has been pulling the team through with his hits, and I had to say, I think Braves are going to bring it home. I mean, I get it that Houston might have won back in 2017, but I think the Braves have that chemistry going that they know what they're aiming for, they know what the goal is, and that's what they're going to get.
How many games? Braves in how many?
I'm going to say Braves in 5. Just to keep it interesting.
Gentleman's sweep. Okay. Because I was paranoid you were going to say Braves in 6 because that's my prediction. So
no, Braves in 5.
So at first I wanted the Braves to win because, full disclosure, the first team I fell in love with sports-wise was the 1990s Atlanta Braves. To this day, I remember Sid Bream rounding third against the Pirates, taking them to the World Series. But I digress. But the more I thought about it, the more it became, this is actually a logical pick. Because like you said, Eddie Rosario, dude's on fire. He's hitting like 560. He had 3 home runs. He had 14 hits, which tied the postseason series record. And oh, by the way, he's only the second player ever to get multiple 4-hit games in a postseason series. They literally could not get him out, which I find hilarious because before that series, I don't think I'd ever heard of Eddie Rosario. And now he's like the greatest guy on the planet. And
exactly.
And going to the other side with Houston, like their pitching might be a problem because in the ALCS, they didn't have a single pitcher get past the 3rd inning until Game 5. They won 2 of those games, which speaks for their offense, but they struggled pitching-wise. It was crazy bad. But Atlanta's pitching is probably better than Boston's pitching? Question mark?
Which I agree. I mean, that the give and take, there's always going to be those few pitches that, you know, once they make the switch, their chemistry level of what they had going on is going to change, and it might be for the better or worse. But in this case, I think Atlanta's pitching is a lot better than Houston's, and I just think Houston might just give them pitches that will bring them home. So
I was kind of emotional and then logical, and then here's what nailed it home. I saw this today, and it was like, yes, I'm going with the Braves. Because, yes, Houston had a better record. Yes, Atlanta was a team that was not over 500 until August 6th. But if you only looked at August, September, and October, the Braves went 43-22, Houston went 38-29, and Atlanta had a higher run differential, more home runs, and a lower ERA than the Astros. And as you know, in playoffs, it's usually the team that's hot at the right time that wins it. And right now, even though Atlanta squeaked in, they are the hot team right now. But I got a couple of other nuggets for you. And this is totally non-related to baseball, but just nuggets that I found. Did you know that Atlanta's manager, Brian Snitker, his son is the hitting coach for the Houston Astros.
So there's definitely some family dispute going on right now as we speak.
Thanksgiving dinner in that house is going to be awkward.
Yeah. The give or take who brings home the ring, but someone's going to be showing off something shiny.
Somebody might get disinvited, yeah.
All right.
So, but here's the other aspect I find funny is the commissioner, Rob Manfred. He is literally in a no-win situation because he's going to have to either present the championship trophy to a team that he relocated the All-Star game against because of political stuff, or he's going to have to present it to a team who had the biggest team cheating scandal since the Black Sox of 1919. Either way, he's going to get booed, but to be honest with you, he may not care because if I recall, he says it's just a piece of metal anyway.
Oh, this is going to be interesting. But I mean, this is definitely a World Series to keep an eye out for. And like I said, I got the Braves in 5 and you got Braves in 6. So it should be good.
Which means Houston will probably sweep.
Yeah, definitely give and take. Yeah, man, gotta love the World Series. So coming to the conclusion of the World Series preview, let's talk into our next topic of the NBA 75. Sean, take this one away. I know you have much to say. I know your heart wants to pour out. I know you feel some type of way. Please take it away.
Well, I do feel some kind of way because I think this is awesome. I love the NBA. This team is to honor the 75th NBA season. They went ahead and they had this panel pick who they thought were the 75 greatest players of all time. Somehow, due to a tie, the list ended up actually being 76 players, and you know how I feel about ties, so I'm like, what the hell? And at the time of the selection, this team, quote-unquote team, or this list, if you will, they have a combined 158 championships, 62 MVP awards, 48 Finals MVP awards, and 730 All-Star selections.
Jesus.
When we were discussing this topic, I was kind of like, I don't want to really do snubs because everybody's doing snubs and they're so emotionally driven. So I wanted to actually spin this a little bit to, hey, instead of talking about who didn't make the 75 list, when they do this list again in 25 years for the NBA 100, I want to talk about players who are in the league right now that we think could be on that NBA 100 list.
In the future wise.
Yeah. So me being me, I had to organize it a little bit. So I broke it down into like 3 categories. I have the players that I think are locks. Like right now, they either are already on that list or do need to do very little to get on that list. I got some players that I think are on the rise, like their pace is good, or they're coming up. Maybe they had a slow start, but they're building up to where if they keep this pace up, they're going to make that list. And then I got the players that are the potential's there, but they're just still too young to make that determination.
Okay.
So I got for my locks, I got Luka Doncic. I know he's young, but he doesn't need to do a whole lot more already to be considered one of the greatest players in the 100-year history of the NBA. Klay Thompson. There are arguments that he should have been on the 75 list already. So if he doesn't play another game in the NBA, I think he's still going to be on that list. Which, by the way, I don't know if you heard this, his team pranked him with a jersey that said the number 77, making fun of the fact he didn't make the 75 list.
I would have cried.
Yeah. The next player I got that's a lock, if he keeps it up, is Joel Embiid. I think statistically he's kind of already there, but he probably would need a title to lock it in. But even if he doesn't win a title, as long as his numbers stay where they're at, I think he'll be on the list. And another one I think he might have got snubbed, but maybe not when you think about it, is Jimmy Butler. He has lit the league on fire. He's just played for too many teams. Like it's when you're that good, you're not supposed to play for that many teams unless it's through free agency. And he hasn't really had the smoothest path. So
Right.
those are my 4 locks of NBA players right now I think are in. Do you have any locks right now off the top of your head you think that people are getting in?
I mean, other besides the list you kind of came up with, I mean, locks. I mean, I've heard in the past rumors about Devin Booker. The whole, oh, this is Kevin Booker about, the look-alike about Kobe and stuff like that. But I mean, I could actually put Devin Booker on the too young still. I mean, he's barely 25. Asking your expertise, do you really think Devin Booker is too young? I mean, we have a lot of star players who's on the NBA 75th anniversary team that have been playing at a young start but have been making it even at a young start. These are players that they saw potential. They saw every day that they went hard at the gym, working out, making sure they got their top plays in. For example, Kobe. But I think Devin Booker is someone to keep an eye out. I think he might be in the future, but I still do think he has a bit of work to do.
Right. Like Devin Booker, like I didn't have him in the locks and I didn't have him in the too young because I think he's kind of in that middle category of being on the rise. And
Yeah.
when I started looking at this, because I'm like you, I hear the Kobe rumors, he's starting to look like Kobe and all that stuff. When I broke it down, I was like, yeah, he looks like Kobe, except he's a little more of a shooter and he doesn't drive as often, which to me means he's not like Kobe.
Right.
If I had to actually compare him to a player from the 75 list, I think he may be more like a Reggie Miller type, where like he could be a sharpshooter from the outside, but he's more mid game too.
Right.
He drives the hole more than Reggie does, but Reggie also played in a time where if he shot as many threes as Devin Booker did, he'd be kicked out of the league. So it's all kind of relative. If Reggie played today, he'd probably be shooting like Devin Booker. So I got him on the rise. So other players I got on the rise, I got Nikola Jokic, just came off the MVP. But if he keeps his team in the playoffs going forward, I think he get to that point where he's in that 100 list. Yeah, Jason Tatum, definitely. I'll throw in there because I keep hearing how awesome Jason Tatum is. I personally don't see it, but he's the one guy on this list that I'm probably like, people know more than I do. So if they put him in, he must be better than I think he is. But another guy I think is on the rise and is actually may get there as long as he can have at least 1 or 2 good seasons is Bradley Beal. The guy has carried sorry teams for like the last 5 years and has got no recognition because he's carried sorry teams. If he ever got in a situation where he had a competitive team, I think his true colors would shine, and that would put him towards that list.
Okay.
Just to wrap up my guys that I think are just too young. These are all guys that are like less than 3 seasons in, but they could be there. Trae Young. I also like Ja Morant. I think he is a superstar in the making. I like LaMelo Ball, like Justin Herbert fan club in the NFL. I'm starting to become a LaMelo Ball fan club in the NBA. And the one guy that I hesitantly put on the list is Zion Williamson because I hate to say this, but his weight's also already becoming an issue. And if this thing with guys that jump and weight, it usually doesn't end well.
I could see that.
So who did I miss, Katie? You got anybody in mind that I missed?
No. I mean, pretty much, Sean, I don't think you missed anybody. I think you kind of nailed it. I mean, if anything, there might be a couple more too young or on the rise. They're always going to be on the rise. Either they're going to make it through or they're not. But, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's a pretty solid list that you had, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see the next 25 years on who else makes it to that list. So. So let's lead us to the last final topic, Colin Kaepernick. I mean, that's a subject that a lot of people have a lot of opinion and a lot of, emotion towards. But let's talk about that documentary that's set to come out tomorrow, the 27th of October. It's a show and it's pretty much navigating through race, class, culture, and also about the amount of work that it took him to make it through to the NFL, for all for it to just be taken away. give and take. There's a lot of emotion that went through on, and there's could have been a lot more explanation that could have been brought on from the NFL, especially his team, about his reasons of doing what he did, which was, kneeling during the national anthem back in 2016 for protest against police brutality, which we saw was a huge movement. I mean, police brutality has been amongst, it's been years and years of problems that not just recently, but we're talking about like ages ago that has been occurring over and over. And it's not just to bash on the police. I mean, not everyone, I in my opinion, not everybody in the police department is, against this, against us. There's ones that want to do good for us. And then there's ones that have their own personal opinions on how things should be run and how justice should be brought, which Kaepernick in 2016 brought, kind of into the big screens during big playoffs where people come with kids, families, and you're put into a huge TV screens and like everybody's watching you. He kind of put that out into attention. Like, no, like this is, I'm taking a stand. Like, this is what I believe in. And he completely lost it all after that. Sean, what are your thoughts?
Well, like you said, yes, this is a very controversial topic. However, because it is such a controversial topic, I do think it is something we need to discuss and at least acknowledge is being presented out there. Like you said, like a lot of this comes from his kneeling in 2016. But from what I understand, this series is not necessarily about the protests or even what's happened since then. It's meant to like talk about like his upbringing, like from like his point of view, like his life, if you will. I believe the quote for the description of the series is, "The series is intended for the world to know Kaepernick the man rather than the symbol some have grown to love or hate." Which that last part like is the part that I think a lot of people assume this is about. Is they're probably assuming this documentary is about his stance, and whether you love him or hate him, that's what this is about. From what I understand, this is the opposite of that. This, I believe, is going from his younger days all the way up to when he made the NFL, more like his journey rather than the destination.
Right.
But it's one of those, I would recommend folks watch it, whether it's to confirm what you already think or maybe have an open mind of maybe I have a different point of view on this. And by the way, I say that meaning both ways. I don't begrudge anybody who was upset about his protests. I admit I personally wish that he chose a different way to protest. But having said that, I also couldn't think of a manner of protesting that got the attention that it did. Like, again, I wish that he stood for the flag. However, that's where you're going to get the most attention. And I do think his protest, a lot of it got focused on his means rather than his message, which I think he tried to avoid, because if I believe he also altered his protest from sitting to kneeling to try to get people to realize, hey, this isn't really about the way I'm protesting. I want you to hear my message. But by then, the floodgates were opening and everybody was upset or loving, and nobody was really switching sides. Like, it was hard to convince anybody otherwise. The only thing I specifically remember from that time frame that truly bothered me was how it instantly turned into he's disrespecting the military. And you and I both know a lot of military members. I don't recall speaking to any member of the military who saw what he was doing as disrespecting the military. They may not have agreed with his methods or his message, but the manner in which he was protesting, they didn't take offense to that as a military member. I don't know if I'm making sense, but it was almost like as a military member, they were feeling that's his right to do that. That's actually what we fight for. Now, again, not all of them agreed with his message. That's a different category. But for the rest of the world, it was like instantly he's disrespecting the military. And that was a quick jump that I just never quite understood. Like, you could not agree with his message, but to be angry on behalf of other people that, from what I could tell, weren't even angry themselves, just confused me. But anyway, I've talked for a while. Katie, what are your thoughts? Like, you have any more thoughts on this?
I do. And definitely I want to touch on that part that you did say, more of his quote. Like, he was more looked at more of his meme, more of like, he wasn't taking a look at what his message was trying to bring out. And it all landed on that moment for Kaepernick to be the main focus of just that. So everybody didn't know who this guy was, or either knew him because they were playing on his favorite team of the Niners or whatever not. But in all one moment, everything was just taken away from him so quickly and so fast. I mean, it was to a point where it was like, hold on, like he has earned his spot to be on the NFL. He has earned his spot to be where he is. And he has done so many achievements to earn what he has, you know, and for all to be taken away because of, you know, a message he wanted to give out. And this has to do more of people thinking or already putting out what they believe the message was trying to contribute, and into going into like the disrespect of the military and X, Y, and Z. But it was just more of making awareness of the protest of police brutality. And I'm glad that he's coming out with this, because people don't realize how in one instance a lot of things could be taken away for example, as him, all his years of hard work that he put in and the struggles he had to grow up in, and the challenges that and the obstacles that he had to overcome just to be in the position where he was. And it kind of shows his how he truly believed in this message he wanted to put out to the people. And I'm not saying that he was willing to give it all, but I don't think anybody, or I didn't think this was an act for him to lose everything. It's okay for him to show what he feels like, you know, and if he feels like taking a knee while the national anthem for him to prove a message, I mean, that's the way he feels. And it's just like you said, Sean, like, I mean, we fight every day for people to be able to do the right acts of freedom here. And, you know, there's no better way to getting national people's attention, or getting head players' attention, or getting big people's attention, and making sure this message gets across. Because, I mean, soon after, I think a lot of people started doing their own messages. Beyonce, you have a lot of people who started videotaping the police brutality and X, Y, and Z, and starting to show more of these messages come into play. But no one ever goes back to Kaepernick and be like, you know what? Maybe it's not in the way that we thought of him. You know, let's not think of him as a love or a hate because of the message he was trying to give out, but let's think of him more of a player. You know, he is doing what everybody has the right to do, but he's just in a position where he's able to do this in big screens because of where his position's at. I'm really glad that this is coming out. I mean, this is more of a, you know, everybody has their struggle in life, and it definitely, he had his, and especially in the preview that he gave out, like, you know, it just shows like the obstacles that he had to face in order to be where he is. And, you know, how race, culture, and discrimination was being throughout his life, has been through. And like, it all leads to just one day that not one day, but more of this one event that everybody decided to lock eyes on him and, you know, finally throw him out. This is something that I'm definitely going to be out on the looks tomorrow. I'm going to be watching it. I'm going to be seeing what his next message is to us. And I'm definitely going to be talking about this for next week's episode.
Yeah. And like you said, like, I don't expect anybody who watches this documentary to have their mind changed. I right. Don't expect that, because there are plenty of people who think that his initial protest is what started the movements that we've had in the last couple of years. There are people who think we wouldn't have this problem if he didn't start that. But there's also a demographic of people who think he was ahead of his time. Like, that demographic looks back and says, look, he was saying this 5 years ago and nobody listened, and it just got worse. So no matter which demographic you fall in, I don't think watching this documentary is going to change your mind, because like, there's plenty of people I heard like, well, he shouldn't be doing that while he's in uniform for the 49ers. And my retort to that is like, so you didn't want him to get his message out there on the biggest platform that was available to him? Like, it just didn't make sense. Now, having said all that, the flip side was also true. Like, people say, well, they shouldn't infringe on his rights. I was like, the NFL and NFL teams, they're privately owned. So as much as it's his right to a protest, it's also the Niners and unfortunately the rest of the league's right to say, hey, we don't want you on our team. So it like I feel weird because as controversial as this topic is, I literally get both sides, and maybe that's my logical brain getting in front of my emotions. I just wish that people didn't jump to the conclusions of what either way, whichever side you're on. I just wish people didn't jump to their conclusions and was willing to hear the other side. But I could say that for most of the topics in our country right now is nobody ever wants to hear the other side. A lot of it's, hey, I'm right and you're wrong. And not only are you wrong, but bleep you. And then when we get nowhere without having honest, open discussions, like you could agree to disagree, but if you're not even going to listen to the other side, we're getting nowhere.
Right.
So I hope that this may be maybe the first domino for in the future of us getting back to talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if it's going to be the right setting to do it, if it's making sense, because I do think there's a demographic that's absolutely going to watch, and I think there's another demographic that's not going to touch us with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Now, I wish everybody watched it just to have an open mind, but I got to admit, I really don't have a lot of faith that that's going to happen right now.
And it's just like you said, you have to come into this show with an open mind. You can't just come in with, I believe this way. I don't care what he says. Like, no, then what's the point of you watching? You just have to come with an open mind. And it takes me back a little bit because Colin Kaepernick, he took a kneeling for police brutality. And I think this is where power plays a lot, especially where you are in a structure of life. Because yes, Kaepernick was somebody that played in the NFL, played for the Niners at the time, but he wasn't like, oh my God, Tom Brady, one of the quarterbacks of the Buccaneers and back then, of course, the Patriots. But if I'm correct, back in February of 2016, we had Beyonce do a halftime show with the Black Panthers, in all forms of showing police brutality as well. And you don't see people automatically throwing Beyonce down the drain and, getting her kicked off of her record labels and none of that, So I understand there's a lot of feelings, but also people need to take a step back with an open mind and just not go into jumping conclusions, but more of just being open to what the message is saying and being able to look at it at both sides. So definitely I agree with you. And I think tomorrow will be interesting. And I don't expect nothing to change as well. But I just expect people more. I just wish people were just more open-minded into it. And, for any future messages, because we're in a century where things don't go silent, but more of people are more open now and have more courage and have the backs of others to stand up to what they believe in. And I do strongly believe this is not, the last and final message we'll get from, an NFL star, or the next one could come from an NBA star, or the next one could come from, a baseball game that we weren't expecting or something. But I do believe that people will show messages throughout, the years that are coming forth.
Yeah. And like I said, and I can't reiterate this enough, I'm not asking for anybody to go in there and have their mind changed. I'm more along lines of just listen. And if at the end of your discussion with whether it's this documentary or any other discussion, if you listen and your mind is not changed, that's fine. But if you're just going to instantly tune out because you disagree with the other person, that to me is part of the problem.
Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our episode for today. And I hope you enjoyed it like always. But if you want more from us, if you want to ask questions, if you want to know more, or if you just want to have a dispute on any of our social media platforms, Sean, where can they find you?
Well, they could find me on Twitter at Sean_Brady82. That's SHAWN_BRADY82. But I'm also happy to announce that we have started our own Twitter page. If you want to follow us, or if you want to promote topics or argue with us, you could find us at Excuse My Frenemy on Twitter. Katie, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter as well, and that would be Katie with 3 E's at the end, 172887. Don't ask about those last numbers. I do not know. I created Twitter at a young age. But You can either find me there, or you can also find me on Instagram. It's just Katie Cabrera. Just type that in. You'll probably see me pop up real quick. But please give us hints, give us titles, give us topics, give us questions, or just fight back with us and just try to see what you guys want to hear more about. But definitely don't get your hearts broken if we say something you won't like. So, but anyways, tune in next week with more topics and more questions that we will be answering. And we shall see you guys later.